So, one of the hallmarks of your platform, really since day one, you led the charge on this amongst the field, all 35 of our challengers. You were the only one initially in saying uh, the truth about the homelessness, drug abuse, and mental health crisis that we have here in Washington State. So, I'd like to talk a little bit tonight for the folks at home, maybe who are new to the show. We've talked about this subject many times, but I'd like to dig into it a little bit more this evening, Loren. You've said many times that Washington doesn't have a homelessness problem. You said that for since day one that this is an addiction and mental health problem. Can you talk a little
Yes.
bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, it didn't used to be like this. It wasn't like this when I was growing up. It wasn't. I've lived in Washington State my entire life, other than 4 years in the military. It hasn't been like this. 15, 20 years ago wasn't like this. It's getting worse. Every year it's worse. And the reason that it's worse, and let me preface this by saying that I was a narcotics detective for about 3 years. I've dealt with people on the streets, both in mental health problems and addiction crisis. This so-called homeless crisis is not all about homes. The majority of people that are on the street, not all of them, but the majority are having mental health problems or addiction problems. And like I said, I've dealt with it. But you can go to places like King County, you can have 7 or 8 grams of heroin on you, and the police will not arrest you because the prosecutors will not prosecute. They say that it's the left always says it's not compassionate to put an addict in jail. And I found exactly the opposite to be true. Heroin, just residue of it in a baggie, is a felony in this state. And we would arrest them, take them to jail. They'd see the judge. Judge would give them a choice. They go to treatment or they could go to prison. And most of them chose treatment. And the left says that's not compassionate. Well, a funny thing started happening. These people would get their head cleared. They'd get off the drugs. They'd get a job. They would get their kids back, and they'd come back and give me a hug and thank me for saving their life. That happened so many times. And at first it's a little bit weird because people walking up, and giving a police officer a hug, someone that I previously arrested. Um, but it, you know, but it's very heartfelt, and it's very true. Leaving people on the street stuck in the cycle of addiction, that's nowhere near compassionate, And when you do that, when you set up policies like that, that attracts people from all over the country to come to places that allow that. Um, and that's why we've seen this big explosion of people living on the street. We cannot continue to allow bad behavior, because what happens is you just get more and more of that bad behavior. It just compounds itself. People start coming here from all over the place. So we need to address the core issue on that, and that's the drug addiction, and get that taken care of. I toured a facility down in Longview not too long ago, and they used to follow mostly the state rules because they got mostly state funding, but they had to be a zero threshold entry program, which means very lax rules. People could come and go, but they were only getting single digit success rates down there. So the board of directors got together. They completely changed the format. They no longer take mostly state funding. They get funding from local businesses and donors in the community. And they've gone from a single digit success rate to 76% success rate. And they count success from someone coming in off the street with an addiction or mental health problem, and then being out on their own with their family unit together, making a living for themselves and paying their own way. That's success. That's compassion. And that's what we have to do. We, we can't keep following the left's model of it's not compassionate to put addicts in jail. It takes tough love to get someone off of heroin. They're not just going to wake up one day and say, yeah, I'm not going to do heroin anymore. And then on the mental health side of that, um, Jay Inslee is a very bad manager. That's obvious. Western State Hospital lost its certification with the federal government after several warnings. And along with that certification from the federal government went millions and millions of dollars that were coming into the state for the mental health problem. I know as a first responder, when someone tries to kill themselves or they're having some other type of mental problem, The police officer will go there, to try to help the person, take them to the hospital. They'll see a first level mental health counselor, and that mental health counselor will evaluate them. And yeah, this person needs, a higher level of care. They'll get on the phone and they'll spend maybe an hour or more calling around to facilities trying to find a bed anywhere in the state for that person. And 9 times out of 10, there is not one available, and they're turned right back out on the street. And that falls right at the feet of Jay Inslee and his bad management of this problem. So we need to get those things fixed. I know what those problems are. I've dealt with them on the street. It just takes someone who understands what's going on and has the will to get it done, and I do.